teachers and school staff. So what is the latest on your fight to ensure that schools can open safely in the face of the administration's lack of a scientific approach? We all know that science clearly isn't ruling the day with this administration.
So let me see, I could spend, as I'm sure Becky can, hours on this question. And today I have just, and I'm using this as an example because it's clear as a result how haphazard, chaotic, intentionally the federal government has been. Today we are in court in Florida right now on trying to get an injunction against the state. And the Secretary of Education, in light of testimony that already has shown just how they have refused to actually focus on the science. We spent the entire day in mediation yesterday and they didn't move one whit. And today they said, even if we win the injunction, they will go after it because it's all about politics for them. As Jean said about being expendable, they clearly see children, teachers, and communities as expendable. So we're in court today, right now. At the same time, our affiliate in New York City made a really terrific proposal about how to take the science and be very transparent and put it into a report card, but then actually say, let's make sure, just like our affiliates in LA, how we have a robust testing and tracing system so we don't have in public schooling the same thing that is now happening in colleges, which is North Carolina, Notre Dame have all kind of shut down days after they opened because they didn't have this and other things in place. Cornell and other places are really trying to find the bucks to actually have that kind of testing and tracing process. The reason I actually say this is that at the end of the day, we as a labor movement have always been about trying to make sure we protect the health and safety of our workplaces and our communities. Look at what happened, from the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire Factory to the work in meatpacking factories to all the work that Jean has done with nurses, that we have done with nurses. You try to do that all the time. But we are doing that on shifting grounds with no federal guidance, with no resources, and where you have a situation where even school superintendents, like the Idaho school superintendent, not much shocks me, but I was really shocked by this, where he actually said to listen to experts is like going into totalitarianism. Well, we actually as educators believe that we're experts about education. To listen to experts is like going into totalitarianism. We need to have a national government that believes in science and believes in safety first and foremost. In fact, the public is ahead of the government in that 80% recent study today, 80% of the public says Republicans, Democrats, independents alike, cross-racially, that we need to make sure that health and safety comes first and foremost. So what is happening is that all across America, you're actually seeing more schools starting remotely if they act because they don't have the resources or the plan. Last thing I'll say is this. This is a huge experiment right now, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way. We are going to indoor work. It's probably the biggest indoor expansion of reopening that we have seen in 6 or 7 months. We have to be absolutely, we have to be fixated on making sure that it's safe. And if it isn't safe, how we close it down to ensure that kids and teachers are safe. So very dynamic situation. Most of the places that I represent are now starting remotely, but we have lots of different hotspots because we have lots of district superintendents or state superintendents like in Idaho or in Florida that actually believe that children and educators are expendable.
That story from Idaho is staggering. I cannot believe it. But I guess in this day and age, we have to. Thank you for that. And this notion that robust testing and tracing is at the key of this. And the union is actually, again, stepping up here. So thank you for all the work that you've been doing, Randy. Becky, so exciting to see your ascension to the top job, although I know you've been a leading voice in education for some time, of course. But tell us what you've been hearing from parents across the country as you fight for the safe return to school, and tell us about the role that the union has played in looking out for the safety of students and teachers and school staff.
So, Liz, I want to begin here, and it's where I begin with every interview I do or panel, because there seem to be some folks who are implying that educators don't want to be back physically in their classrooms. Nothing could be further from the truth. No one wants to welcome students back to their classrooms more than educators. As a science teacher, Liz, I know firsthand that nothing can replace creating that space to support and nurture a student's curiosity about the wonders of nature or the laws of physics, working in those lab groups, using the scientific method to explore solutions with their peers. Our students want to be in schools, our educators want to be with them, and our parents want our students there too. But our parents are afraid. They're afraid. They see the lack of leadership from Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. They see the callous disregard that they both have for their children and for the people who have dedicated their lives to educating them. They see governors and school officials not paying attention to the guidance that are coming from their own states. You saw right outside of Phoenix in Arizona, where our educators, NEA leaders are taking action, because their school leaders are completely ignoring the guidance and their schools are not safe at all. Our parents are worried for the health and safety of their children and their families. I often talk about, and you all know this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the very basic need in this reality is we need our students to be safe. We need them to be alive so they can learn. That's the basic. And our parents understand that. There are so many districts who are now requiring educators and parents to sign waivers to release them from liability if students get sick or die. What does that say? If they're asking for that, they already know that they are making disastrous decisions, ones that could come back to bite them. And so they're asking for parents to actually sign away their right to sue them because they put their children in that unsafe environment. Parents are nervous and they're anxious and scared. So we're partnering with them, just like we did in the Red for Ed movement, just like we did in the strikes that occurred in Oakland and UTLA. The parents were our first partners, because they understood that we had gone through decades of disinvestment in our public schools, and that it was time for this country and for our states to step up to educating them. So we are partnering with our parents to not only to understand what's at stake, because you know what, Jean, I could not agree with you more. This is deliberate. We know it's deliberate. We knew it was deliberate when Donald Trump put Betsy DeVos's name up for Secretary of Education, because her whole life was dedicated to profiting off of public education and destroying it. So we know that it is a deliberate effort. So we're educating our parents about that. We're trying to make sure that they have all the information so they are prepared to ask the right questions. We're encouraging them to go to not send their students back until they are sure they are safe, that they can socially distance, that they have disinfecting stations, that they have PPE, that they have plans in place, not if, but when students get sick, when educators get sick. We've already seen it across the country. Randy, you're right. The right word is chaos. It's chaotic. And instead of focusing on improving the teaching and learning in this virtual environment, which we know for the foreseeable future will be our reality, they are putting us in a place where they're asking us to make false choices. So we are partnering with our parents to lead on school board resolutions. We are partnering with them to take action, whatever it is, from grassroots action to legal action, which Randy talked about, to political action. Go out and vote. Anyone who likes you or loves you or intends to keep living with you needs to go out and vote, and they need to demand that Congress and the Senate take action on the HEROES Act. So we are doing all of that work with our parents because they are afraid and they see the failure of the leadership from Donald Trump and the people in the White House and in the Senate and throughout the federal government. So we are partnering with them in a way that we know will position us to do what's right for our babies.
Thank you so much. That was powerful. And I am so glad that you start every interview or panel with that, demystifying this. Teachers and educators want to be back in the classroom, and partnering with parents is so powerful. And that Red for Ed movement has inspired the labor movement, really. If you think about what has happened over the last couple of years and the activism, working people have had enough, and very much so in this pandemic. So thank you for your leadership. Jean, nurses have been leading this fight since the beginning, not only caring for patients, but by advocating for personal protective equipment to ensure that they can do their job safely. And there has obviously been a lack of PPE in time after time. We're seeing it. And I know you just did a survey of 22,000 nurses. Can you tell us about the challenges our healthcare heroes have had in securing PPE and what the union has been doing about that?
Sure. Well, to start with, it's no secret that the nurses have been for Medicare for All for decades, and there's a reason. What we foresaw and what we use as an example is the possibility of a pandemic. We raced it again at the time of Ebola, and here we are, and sad to say, this isn't the only one that's coming. It doesn't give us any pleasure to say, I told you so. Not at all. And believe me, I love saying I told you so. But what we have found out is all the shortcomings of this patchwork system that we have. We don't have a national health system. Regardless of what you call it, we don't have one. It's a patchwork. And this president has made it even worse. And we're all paying the price for it. Our nurses and our union have gone through all the proper channels and done demonstrations, marches, socially distanced, of course. At the same time, we wrote to everyone, World Health Organization, CDC, OSHA, the White House. The only response we got was one saying, thank you for your missive. That was our response. So it wasn't that we expected more, but it doesn't feel good to know that what we did expect is what we're getting, which is nothing. As Becky said, it's not just not helping, it's deliberate sabotage. So here we are. What are nurses doing? Well, we demand every day, every shift. We write, we demonstrate. We've had at least 2 demonstrations in front of the White House where we placed pairs of shoes indicating our fallen nurses and other healthcare workers to show that we are not replaceable and someone better do something. The public has been assisting us by signing our petition online, which you can all go to, nationalnursesunited.org, that we get the PPE that we need. We talk about transparency, the lack of it. And I will tell you that not only do we not have the equipment that we need, but we are also lied to about it. We have no clue when they say that the supply is adequate. And we say, then why are we reusing equipment, which is scientifically based to be not helpful, not safe for us? We are told, well, we're forestalling another shortage. So which is it? Do you have it stockpiled or do you not? That's why in the HEROES Act, we have pushed for. There is a provision for a national entity that will oversee, transparently know where the equipment is, how much of it we have, where it can be sent to, where it's needed most, to the hot spots, and that we can trust that because it is transparent. Everybody knows that it's there. I don't have to walk through a storehouse with you to prove to me that it is there. Our nurses are valiantly caring for their patients every day, refusing to reuse equipment that keeps them safe when it's not reused. We are doing the distance demonstrations that I talked about, and we're relying very heavily on the public and other union brothers and sisters to help us with what we need to keep people safe. I cannot stress to you enough how much the public's health means to nurses. We consider that our job, and thank goodness we do, because obviously it doesn't appear to be the president's job. So what we need is a president who will stop telling people not to listen to the experts, who will rely on nurses and doctors and other medical people who understand what we're doing. And as Randy said, we are the experts. We should never be afraid to say so. And we have to do the difficult thing, just as we do every day in hospitals and clinics around the country. We cannot be afraid to speak truth to power. If I get an order that's going to hurt a patient, I do not deliver that order. I tell the doctor or nurse practitioner why, and we solve it together. But we are there to advocate for those patients. We are there to advocate for the public's health. If you don't have us, you have no one. We've been called the canaries in the coal mine, and in this instance, we are. We'll do everything we can that we're doing now into the future to protect the public's health. But we have to be able to rely on a president and a government who gets that. There's been lots of flowery talk about Joe Biden for president, Kamala Harris for vice president, and I echo everything that's already been said. But quite frankly, at this point, I would just want to elect two sane, rational human beings, and they are. And they've got the expertise and the years of experience to help us out. And they care. Nurses have caring, compassion, and community. We need a government administration who cares also. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jean. And I couldn't agree more. And as you said, if they would just listen to the experts, those who are on the front lines with the expertise, and thank you for making the connection to the need for healthcare for all, especially during a pandemic, right? And the fact that we still have a lack of PPE is staggering. After everything we've been through, right? That's the reason why you emphasize the HEROES Act, right? And I've heard that from many of the panelists. So thank you. And John Costa, I know that Greyhound and other intercity bus companies have been devastated by COVID-19. And ATU is advocating for relief money for the motor coach industry, which was not part of the CARES Act. So tell us more about why this service is so important to the public and to your members.
Yes, Liz, it is very important to the public and to my members. As you said, the CARES Act did help us with our PPE, even though we had to take a position and train all our business agents on what the law was, because many of the agencies just thought it was free money that they could utilize and offset their budgets, especially in the private sector. So unfortunately, the CARES Act did not have any money for over the road and along with school bus. So in our over the road, we have like Greyhound, thousands of our members are laid off, no health care. In the school bus industry, the same. They're laid off, no health care. And at a time like this with no health care, it's alarming. So unfortunately, our Congress and our leadership did the right thing in one area, but forgot the others. So, over the road is very important. I live in Jersey, New York City. Many of our people go to New York, to Broadway. To bring back the cities, you're going to need this service. And we're going to need our members to come back to work. And we're going to need Congress to help out and get those buses back on the road and those workers back and into the buses and to move the people. In the school bus industry, as you know, school is opening now. We have many concerns about how that's going to affect. We hope we learned from the past. This administration, I have no faith in them in getting this right. So once again, we're making our demands. We're training our business agents and our members to organize, unify, and fight back with the position that if you're not going to give us the PPE, if we're not going to do social distancing, we're not moving buses. We don't want to do that to the parents. We don't want to do the riders, but we believe that it's not only safe for our members, it's also safe for the kids. And at the same time, we don't want to add any of our school bus members to the list of our fallen members that we already have. So it's a major concern that we get some funding there and get those buses back to work. DeCamp, one of the oldest over-the-road bus companies in the country, has closed down its doors, leaving over 600 members that did, riders that did come back to work stranded. I'm hoping that the agencies, like the public agencies in New Jersey and New York and the big cities, pick it up. Private PPE and private partnerships, and that all sounds good until the stock market crashes, right? And they're supposed to bail us out. I guess Trump would think that, right? The private sector is a good thing, but when there's no profit in it, they close the doors, they leave. So that's why transit should be public. That's why it is public. It's essential to our economy. So I'm hoping that they will pick up and put some of these buses out there, and express buses, and move our communities and keep them alive for those that need transportation, because not everybody can afford a car. And especially now with no work, we need it more than ever. So I'm hoping that the governors do look at that and force those agencies to start picking up that service and moving its residents and supporting those communities to keep working and being able to pay their mortgage and their electric bills and put food on the table. So I'm hoping Biden and Harris, once they get in there, they fix this. And I know Joe knows transit. He knows it best. And that's one of the important things about this election. We got to get this nut out of well, I'll call it a nut house right now.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for your powerful voice and for providing the leadership that we need and emboldening workers to stand up. Appreciate you. And I think we're about out of time. So want to thank our panelists. You brought the stories and the sacrifices of your members and workers across the economy to life. And I think I heard some consistent themes, right? The lack of leadership, the lack of a plan, the role the union can play in using its power to hold government and companies accountable. The safety strikes that have been happening still show the need for the OSHA infectious disease standard. So that's still front and center. And the urgency of the HEROES Act has come through very clearly as well. And I say quite often that to truly honor our essential workers, we can put signs up in the lawn to show our appreciation. Yes, of course. But the most powerful thing we can do is to make sure that we elect champions who will stand up for them at every level of government, especially in the White House. So we are looking forward to the rest of today's program and looking forward to our vice presidential candidate's keynote tonight. And again, thanks to all of you for your inspiration and for your leadership. Back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And thank you, panelists. We're now going to move on to another panel. And it's a real honor for me to be able to introduce Maria Elena Durazo. Maria Elena was the founding chair of the DNC's Labor Council and is vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. But more importantly, she is one of the most inspiring people I know. Maria Elena's parents were Mexican immigrants, and she spent summers in California's Central Valley fields picking peaches, strawberries, and grapes. After school, she chose to become involved in the labor movement, first as an organizer for the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, and later as president of the Hotel and Restaurant Employees Local in Los Angeles, which she turned into a power center for working people, just as she did later on at the Los Angeles Federation of Labor when she headed that organization too. From there, Maria Elena went on to a job at her national union, promoting civil rights and campaigning for immigration reform. And then in 2008, she was elected to the California State Senate. Her titles and where she has worked has changed over the years, but what she does and why she does it has never changed. She is an organizer, and her life's mission is fighting for workers' power. Today, Maria Elena will be leading a panel of elected officials who come out of the labor movement. And the panel will discuss how to create and get support for legislation to strengthen workers' power. Maria Elena, it's wonderful to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Greetings, sisters and brothers. Thank you. Greetings, Union Democrats. Thank you, Stuart, Carrie, and the other Labor Council leaders. As Stuart said a little while ago, the labor movement is the backbone of the Democratic Party. And why do I say that? Because the labor movement is made up of firefighters and janitors, poultry workers and teachers, food service workers and nurses of all colors, gender, sexual identity, and religion. The labor movement represents workers from East LA, California, to New York City, Miami to Seattle. But what binds us is solidarity. We back each other up. We don't cross a picket line. We raise money to buy food for workers that lost their jobs. Construction workers in Philadelphia march to demand that children don't belong in cages. That's solidarity. And our solidarity is what Joe Biden needs to become the next president of the United States. Solidarity also extends to the halls of city councils, state legislatures, Congress. We fight for health care for all. We fight to raise wages. We fight for child care. And today, we're going to hear from public servants who cut their teeth in the labor movement. In 2018, a blue wave of women were elected into office all across America, including myself. I think we all felt that with Donald Trump in office, we had better get some more women elected to take on his sexism, his racism, and his anti-union plans. So today, I'm proud to introduce 3 of those women who came out of the labor movement. Julie Blaha is Minnesota's state auditor. She is an NEA member and former middle school teacher, a past president of Anoka Hennepin Education, Minnesota, and the first woman elected secretary treasurer of the Minnesota AFL-CIO. New York State Senator Jessica Ramos chairs the Senate Labor Committee and formerly worked with SEIU, Local 371, and SEIU 32BJ in New York City, where she helped win strong contracts for building maintenance workers, office cleaners, and public school cleaners. Connecticut State Senator Julie Kushner. She is the Deputy President Pro Tem and Chair of the Labor and Public Relations Committee. She previously served as the Director of the United Auto Workers, Region 9A, covering New England states, a portion of New York, and Puerto Rico. Good to have my sisters here with us today. I'm going to ask one question that I'd like for all 3 of you to answer, and then we'll get a little bit more specific. So first, since taking office, what have you done? Give us some examples of the work that you've been involved with to give power to workers and to the labor movement. So we'll start with Ms. Blaha.
Thank you so much, Senator. Again, I'm Julie Blaha. I'm Minnesota State Auditor, and I should make sure I'm really clear. I not only was a member of NEA, but also AFT. We're a merged state, so when I saw my sister Randy Weingarten right before me, I wanted to make sure I was with her too. Well, first off, I should probably explain what the auditor does in Minnesota. I oversee almost $40 billion in local government spending. And we do it with examinations like audits and investigations. We provide support like training and tools and policy. And we do analysis. We take in data, we make it usable, and we push it back out. So I know you're thinking two things. One, glamorous. You're right. I was also a math teacher, so my version of glamour is a little off. But also you're probably thinking, well, what does this have to do with building labor power? Well, I can tell you, since workers' issues are everywhere, you need good working people and people who support working people everywhere as well. So I'd actually like to use this question to highlight why you really need good labor people at every level in every type of office. For instance, one of the things I do as auditor is I sit on the board of our Public Employee Retirement Association. I also oversee Fire Relief Association pensions, and I'm on the board of investment in Minnesota that invests almost $100 billion to ensure that our pensions stay strong and that every worker gets the dignity and retirement that they earn. Now, you need a good labor person in those spaces to make sure that they know what an attack on a defined benefit pension looks like and how to fight back. I spent a lot of time making sure people understand why a defined benefit pension is fair and sustainable. I also need to watch out for some of those laws that we have worked so hard to get. A lot of people don't know that an audit often checks in on things like prevailing wage. You know, you need an auditor who understands that prevailing wage is all about creating the kind of wages that actually lift up entire communities. So because of that, I take that work to make sure prevailing wage actually happens and they abide by those laws extremely seriously. And also a big part of my work is the data. Now you'd think that that is an area that's should be relatively unbiased and free from misinformation and those kind of pressures. But we all know in the world of Trump, the truth is always under attack. So it's extremely important to have people in office that understand that the truth actually helps you get to a good decision. Now that shouldn't be a partisan issue. Sadly, Donald Trump has made it one. And so that's why you need to have good Democrats and you need to have good labor people in these offices. Right now, for instance, we are working on pulling together the data about financial health of local government so people can make good decisions. This will help support the kind of SCME group of AFSCME, the county municipal employees, and all these people doing great work in local government. If we understand the data, we get the resources they need to do good work. So I not only am I proud that I've been able to do labor work as auditor, but I urge you all to make sure labor people are in every single position that you can find. Thank you so much.
Well, sounds like what you're doing is exactly what we would expect of any elected official, but it takes someone with a real commitment to workers to make that happen. Thank you. Okay, Jessica?
Yes, Senator.
You want to tell us what kind of work you've been doing to make sure workers are really represented and give them the power they need?
I was elected in 2018, started my job in 2019, and we really hit the ground running. Coming out of the labor movement, we know that offense is organizing and defense means protecting our area standards and expanding as well. So what really I wanted to focus on was our migrant workers and about lifting the floor for all workers in that way. And I have to say, I'm very proud that over the past year and change, we were able to pass a prevailing wage law here in New York. We were able to get off the books here in New York the last Jim Crow era law, which was preventing farm workers from organizing, from having access to unemployment benefits, which came in very handy during the pandemic this year. They didn't even have the right to a day off. And luckily, I'm very proud to say I was able to pass that bill last year. With RWDSU, we worked very closely to ensure we were helping car washeros. They were making a tipped wage before we were able to pass the law. Today, they make minimum wage. And that's really important. It actually led our governor to pass an executive order that does away with the tipped wage with miscellaneous worker classifications. So that's been very good. We, not a labor bill, but we were able to legalize electric bicycles in New York. This helps our delivery workers. It ended the harassment of delivery workers on behalf of the NYPD, ended up being a blessing during the pandemic as well. And in that way, we've been working very hard to protect our day laborers, and we're still fighting to protect our street vendors here in New York so that they have an honest chance to work hard and be able to provide for themselves and their families. But during the pandemic, it's been very difficult. We have had to fight a 2% cap, artificial cap that has been placed on state agencies, including the Department of Labor, which hasn't allowed us really to grow and to be able to be responsive to the overwhelming need of workers in New York State. And I say that this is why we have to continue to educate, agitate, and organize. That's exactly what we used to do when we were working in the labor movement. And if we're in this work now as elected officials, it's because we believe in good government and we believe in the participation of people, and we want them to feel emboldened and empowered to step up for their needs as workers. And I think that during the pandemic, I mean, there's never been a better moment in history for us to ensure that that we are creating those spaces, creating that opportunity for all workers, but particularly people of color who are most often taken advantage of, whether it's with rampant wage theft here in New York, which happens to the tune of $1 billion. I just passed a wage theft bill here in New York not too long ago. We really need to ramp up our efforts, organize smartly, and get out there and talk about the solidarity that is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm really glad to hear about lifting up those mostly at the bottom, because if we don't, then the middle drops to a lower level. We have to lift all of us up. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, another Julie. Julie, tell us about what it's like in Connecticut.
Well, I have to say that it was never my life's goal to be an elected official. So when I decided to run for the state Senate, it was really it was really to replace a long-time Republican seat that the representatives have been anti-worker, anti-woman, very, very conservative. And so when I ran on two top issues: the paid family and medical leave program and a $15 minimum wage. And these were issues that were incredibly, incredibly popular in my district and throughout the state. And so what was fantastic is that when I won the election and got elected, I started on day one working on passing those bills. And as labor chair, I was responsible for making sure those bills got through on a timely basis. And, you know, there's a lot of tradition that a committee might get one bill through in a session. But we had two top-line really important bills to pass. And so what was incredible was being able to pass both a $15 minimum wage and the paid family leave program. And we did this in 2019 session. And I have to say that what I really felt good about was that it wasn't like I was now very remote from the workers and in a legislative position in Hartford, not connected to any of the people. I found through these campaigns that I was very much connected to the movement. We don't pass bills like that. We don't make that kind of law without a movement. And so, of course, the labor movement, especially low-wage workers who are represented by unions were fighting for the $15 minimum wage. And in the paid family and medical leave program, we had a coalition of women's organizations, labor organization, the Working Families Party. We were all working together to make this happen. And it really was incredible. You asked the question, what do we do to empower workers? And I think by passing these two bills, we proved to workers that you can get involved, you can get organized, and you can win. And that the winning has very immediate and dramatic impact on your life. Workers in Connecticut got immediately $1 raise. This year, they're getting another $1. They keep getting $1 until they get to 15. On the paid family leave bill, we know I only wish that it had gone into effect before this pandemic hit. So many families would have benefited from having a paid family leave program. So for me, giving up my role as a union organizer was very tough. It had been my whole life's work, 42 years. But what I said the night that we won the minimum wage, I said to people, it was an amazing feeling. I had negotiated contracts for 5 workers, for 25 workers, for 5,000 workers, but never did I feel like I'd won a raise for 333,000 workers in the state of Connecticut. And that showed the power of electing labor people and the power of our movement.
That's so great. That is really great. And I think you all feel as if when we're doing this now in the elected arena, the scale of the impact of what we could do is far greater. I also appreciate, Julie, what you said of staying connected to the labor movement. I don't think we would all, one, would have the inspiration we need, the continuously checking in on what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and the people on the ground, because we know that without moving up, right, without having a movement, that we really can't get these kinds of legislation passed. So that's great, and congratulations on those victories that you have. Let me go back to Sister Julie Blaha. It says we have 2 Julies here. Julie, in some states, unions have pursued living wage ordinances, right to organize, regulations, and other pro-labor policies. But at the national level, right, we also need legislative protections. What are your thoughts about how we're going to be able to get done, and how do we get that done at the national level?
All right, there we go. I think it's really clear that we have to change the players, right? I think any of us who've negotiated contracts have often told our members, hey, you know, bargaining doesn't start at the bargaining table, doesn't start at planning for bargaining. It starts at the ballot box. You've got to get the right people in there so that you can get the right resources, so you can get the right result. And we clearly need to change that, particularly the Senate. We've got to get that back so people can actually have a conversation. One of the reasons I think we're seeing so many people do this work at the state and local level is because it's stuck at the federal level. And this is where it's really helpful that our movement is so broad. When you have that broad movement, you're able to then connect not just on national issues, but then you can connect with your local issues. And so if they want to, if Trump is going to gum up the works at the federal level, if it gets stalled at the state, well, you can go do it city by city. You know, we're seeing in Minnesota and across the country, people raising the minimum wage city by city. And with that, you have that connection with those local leaders. You know, anyone that's watching who's been a local elected official knows every time they go to the grocery store, they better be able to talk about their last vote because they're going to be explaining it in the checkout line, right? And so we have that kind of connection. And especially as, you know, we've got millions of us who can connect there. Also, I think we give people the chance to see that this works. You know, the more that people are organizing locally, the harder it is for someone in Congress to say this won't work. Well, we've seen it work. We have city after city who have not only not fallen apart because they raised the wage or extended paid family leave. You've seen that they actually are having a better quality of life. They're lifting the whole community. So I think the idea is not only do we need to think federally, but we also have to act locally all together. And again, it's always a callback to my biggest point. run for every office. Good people at every level is important. So you will be needed at every single level.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Julie, the other Julie and I have talked about a piece of legislation at the state level that frankly started exactly the way you said at the local level. This right to get your job back started in one city and then another and then the counties, and it's now in about 7 or 8 jurisdictions. So we really have a different momentum today than when we did with the first idea. So Jessica, unions we know are the best political advocates for working people, whether you're a union member or not yet a union member. And while we're winning on the battlefront of ideas, what do you think are the best ways to ensure protection of the things that we've already won? How do we protect those labor victories that we have and increase the power for the labor movement?
Well, the workforce is changing, and certainly during and after this pandemic, we are going to see a lot more people working from home. Many more jobs might be threatened by artificial intelligence and robots. We are entering a period of transition where we really need to think about how it is that we can strengthen our movement and really fend off the attacks that we've already seen, like Janus, crippling the NLRB. What we need to do is fight to make it easier to organize, make it easier for people to be able to access union jobs. For example, the E-Verify program is something that I find very detrimental to our workforce, particularly for our day laborers here in New York, making them unable to join the building and construction trades when we know that that's the only way to get state certified training and ensure that hopefully you have an employer that provides you with the safety equipment that was required before the pandemic, and especially now that we're looking at them as essential workers, that they're actually provided with the PPE that they deserve. And look, as an upper cusp millennial, we really do need to think about also, I would say, the idea of pensions. I'm very lucky because I worked at SEIU, because I worked at an AFSCME local. I have a secure retirement. But that is not true for most of my peers. And they're sold on the idea of these 401ks that are depend on the fluctuation of the market. And in times like this, well, nobody's profiting off of these 401ks. No, we have a right to a secure retirement. It is why we work so damn hard as Americans, and really is the least that we can do. So these are the things that I look at as labor chair that I believe that we have to think through and address, especially as the world is changing, especially now post-pandemic. There is so much to do in order to think about even the gig economy or the digital marketplace, if you will. Yes, there are the Uber and Lyft drivers, but there's also the shoppers for applications like Instacart, or people who sign up for apps to be able to teach others English in foreign countries. Does the ABC test really work? We've seen, right? Senator Durazo, I'm sure, knows well about this. The challenges to the ABC test out in California, and how we're thinking these issues through as we're moving forward here in New York, because I know, especially in between California and New York, we take turns leading off of each other, because we have very similar populations and very similar struggles, and we have very powerful working class in both places, and so we want to be able to learn from each other in that way. And hopefully, especially now that we're coming together as Democrats, whether you're from the Bernie side of things or whether you're from the Biden side of things, or you were a Warren supporter, it doesn't matter. The enemy is much bigger than all of us, and we have to figure out how the labor movement prevails today and forevermore.
Thank you. Thank you. Music to my ears. So, Julie, we have a last question here. So across the U.S., there's enormous public resources are given to manufacturing companies, and often they make a lot of promises, but actually either eliminate or undercut good American jobs. So what do you think Democrats have to do to make sure that our public dollars are used for the public good?
Well, there's no question that this should be a priority of every state legislature as well as our federal government. We need to make sure that when we are using public monies, that the jobs that are created, first of all, that the jobs that are promised materialize. But just as important, that the jobs that are created are good jobs with good benefits. And the only way to ensure that is to make sure that those workers have the right to unionize. And in every single case where we are giving out public dollars, those workers should have the benefit of a legislated, statutorial labor peace agreement. They should not be allowed to bring in new businesses, whether it's manufacturing or new frontiers like hemp farmers or casinos, or they should all have the opportunity, workers in those sectors, to be able to organize without fear of reprisal, without interference. And that means we have to win card check and neutrality agreements at the state level and at the federal level. And, you know, I spent my life as an organizer. I organized in a lot of sectors that were considered new frontiers, like the graduate teaching and research assistants that we organized. Some of these campaigns took years and years of legal delays and of frustration. It shouldn't take that long to form a union. And we, as elected officials, and I would say the entire Democratic Party, needs to really embrace the right to organize for all workers in the United States. That's my strongest message, and it's what I've always believed in and what I'll always fight for.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great. So the things that you, I think, have all touched on, that you all believe in and that make us stronger leaders, is staying connected to the movement, making sure that we use the information at our disposal to protect things like our retirement, win things at a big scale. We could get so much more done. We're going to get many more union leaders, union activists, union organizers elected to office. That way we can defend all working people. So, we know we're in a tough time right now. We're going to wrap up with this panel, but we have to help our families who are facing survival. They deserve to get their jobs back as business gets back on course. We want to make sure we're finding out more than ever that paid sick leave is even more important during a crisis like this. We should eliminate wage theft once and for all, right, Jessica? I mean, it's unbelievable in LA, $26 million a week in wage theft, primarily still with garment workers. And we have to enforce more than ever our safe working conditions. Cardboard or saran wrap is not a protection for workers. With Joe Biden, we will get through this crisis. We will. Our families will get through this. But we have to use those same values to build the future. We're not just defensive. We're going to get ahead of the game. We're going to build back better with Biden. We're going to rebuild our roads, bridges, schools, and airports. We're going to raise wages to raise our families. We're going to grow manufacturing for public transit and for other public good. We're going to use our dollars for the public good and hold corporations accountable. Green jobs and careers, and an apprenticeship program for our Black and brown youth, for formerly incarcerated, for women. We're going to respect essential workers from the beginning of the food chain to the end. Farm workers, poultry workers, food service workers, grocery workers. We're going to lift up collective bargaining as the law of the land. So I say, sisters, thank you so much. Build back better with union labor. Build back better with Biden and Kamala Harris. Thank you very much. Y sí se puede.
Sí se puede. Maria Elena, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the panelists. It was a wonderful panel. You're doing wonderful work. Keep at it, and thank you. Two of the most exciting campaign experiences I ever had were traveling in 2018 with Stacey Abrams on the first day of early voting in the primary and then again in the general election when Stacey was running for governor of Georgia. We traveled all across Georgia in a van, even to places that other Democrats rarely went. Wherever we went, people showed up in larger crowds than were expected. Wherever we went, people were mesmerized by the stories of Stacey's life and their meaning. And they were excited and empowered by her vision for Georgia and for them. And even though there were 4 actresses in the van with us one of those days, including Tracy Ellis Ross and Rashida Jones, it was Stacey Abrams they wanted to see. Stacey gave them hope, and she energized them to vote for a new future, a fair future, an inclusive future. The race was close, thanks in large part to Stacey's commitment to expanding the vote and her years-long efforts to register more voters. But the election was stolen by the Republican candidate who was also the Secretary of State, the official overseeing the election. And if we win in Georgia this year, and if we elect a Democratic senator from the state, it is going to be in large part because of Stacey's efforts 2 years ago and before. Stacey wants to make sure what happened to her does not happen again. And that is so crucial this year when we all believe that Trump would do whatever he could to steal this election. That is why Stacey created Fair Fight Action. We're delighted, we're thrilled that Stacey Abrams is able to be with us today to talk about voter suppression and protecting the vote in 2020. Stacey Abrams.
Thank you so much, President Applebaum, and thank you to the Labor Council for having me. I know you have an extraordinary lineup yesterday and today, and so I'm just honored to be among the members. But I want to begin by saying thank you to Labor. Stuart was kind enough to point out the success I had in Georgia, and that success is grounded in a long-standing friendship, a long-standing communion with Labor. You are the people who share the vision of what we can be. But more importantly, you are the ones who work tirelessly to make it so. From what happened in Seattle to getting $15 an hour for workers, not just the workers who protested, but for workers across the city. The work that's been done in the South to remind us that labor lives in the South. The work that's being done nationally to lift up the voices of the essential workers who too often are unprotected, undefended, and unfortunately overused and overlooked. I am so excited to be in partnership with Labor because when I'm with Labor, I know I'm in the right place. And during this convention, we are in the right moment to do the work we need to do. Number one, we've got to win America. I know that we like to focus on the titles and the jobs, but our mission is the country. Our mission is a future that our people can believe in. And that begins with voter protection. I get a lot of credit for talking about voter protection, for building Fair Fight Action and Fair Fight 2020. But let's be clear, I had a bit of time on my hands. I didn't get to be the governor of Georgia in 2018. But I was raised by a family that told me that you don't whine about your problems, you work to fix them. And the problem wasn't that I didn't get to be governor. The problem was that voices were not heard, that Georgians were denied their constitutional rights as Americans to speak aloud and pick their leadership. And they were told no. They were purged from roles. They faced polling places that were shut down. They were denied access to a democracy they deserve. And I intend to continue to fight until every American that has the right to vote can use that right to vote. And Fair Fight has been doing this work across the country, 18 battleground states, 67,000 volunteers working hard to ensure that no matter where you live in America, especially if you live in a battleground state, we have worked to make certain that the administration of elections sees you, includes you, and will defend you. But I also understand that it's not enough for us to win at the ballot box if they lie about who's there. And that's why I also created Fair Count to focus on the 2020 census. I want to remind everyone that to win America, it is not enough to win in 2020 at the ballot box. We have to make certain that the story told about who we are is the truth. And the Trump administration is lying about the census. They're trying to end it early so they can use statistical words to erase communities of color, to erase rural communities, to erase the funding and the political power that travels with us. If we want to change the laws of our nation, it is not enough to win just one election. We have to win the census. And Fair Count is working on that. And I'm so proud to be in partnership with Labor to get that work done. But I also understand that for the issues that matter most, we need action in Congress, but we need action in state legislatures. We need action in city councils and county commissions where they remember the community benefit agreements, that labor agreements, that being able to work together to collectively bargain is how we built this country in the first place. And that means we have to not stop at the top, that we are not just rerunning 2016, we're running the 2010 election. And that means we've got to vote all the way down the ballot to where the fine print is. And if we do the census right and we do 2020 right, then we have won not just an election, we've won the future. But we can't get that done if we don't win on the margins. And I will tell you that one of the reasons I am so committed to labor is that labor understands that the margins are where change happens. Stuart was kind enough to point out that I had a bit of a transformative effect on the elections. We tripled Latino turnout, tripled Asian Pacific Islander turnout, increased youth participation by 139%, increased Black participation by 40%, and got the highest share of white voters for Democrats in a generation. And we did that by telling the truth, by talking about education, by talking about healthcare, by talking about workers' rights, by talking about immigration, by talking about the issues that matter to people, and it works. But what worked even better was the fact that we had labor by our sides, knocking doors, making phone calls, sending texts, doing the work to reach those on the margins. Campaigns are going to do their best, but it is labor that understands where we need people the most. We need those low propensity voters who do not hear themselves talked about in commercials, who don't see themselves in the conversations about the middle class because they're still trying to get out of working poverty. But that's where you do your best work, lifting people out of poverty into the working class, into the middle class, and giving them hope that more is possible. You defend essential workers who know that their voices have been drowned out by 170,000 deaths and by a propensity by the leaders of our nation to ignore them and put their lives at risk every day. And you are their defenders. And that means you have to defend their right to vote, but also remind them that they can connect their protest to their power by casting a ballot. That is the work that labor does. And that is the work I'm so proud to do with you. You see the marginalized. You understand the disadvantaged. And your entire history is built on knowing that if we work together, we all rise. And that is how we win the margins. That's how we win those who do not believe that recovery is going to come for them, because disproportionate effects of COVID-19 have left them homeless, jobless, and sick. But they know that you care because you always have. But how do we get there? How do we win America? How do we win the margins? We win with Joe Biden. We win with a man who has proven that his courage is only matched by his capacity to lead. A man who has done the work of speaking with us, not at us, not to us, but with us. Who has responded to the crises of our moments, not by guessing at what should be done, not by hiding from the hard truths, but by speaking aloud, showing up, and doing the work. We know that Joe Biden understands what America deserves to be, what we have been and what we're capable of. He understands that together we can right this ship and write a new story for America, one that is inclusive, one that is progressive, one that is dynamic, and one that keeps us all on the path to good. I had the honor of living in the state of Georgia in the district that was represented by our dearly departed friend, John Lewis. I got to call John Lewis a friend for more than a decade. But more than that, I got to work for John Lewis. Because when he talked about good trouble, about necessary trouble, it wasn't just about fighting for the right to vote, It was about fighting for the right to breathe clean air. And labor, you are doing the work to make certain that we don't have to sacrifice our jobs to live in a country that believes in climate action. It's about the ability to deserve to be sick and get well. And you are fighting against those who would dismantle healthcare. And it's about making sure that our children grow up believing they can be anything they want, because we've done everything we can to make it possible. And labor, you are at the heart of that. When labor stands with Joe Biden stands with America. We stand on the precipice of greatness. And I just thank you so much for letting me join you for a brief moment to talk about how we win the future and how we get it done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stacey. Winning on the margins. That's right. That's exactly how we win. And thank you for leading your efforts. The partnership that we have with you at the NEA and Fair Fight, that the labor union is collectively partnering with you on election administration, that is one of the most important aspects that we can take away as how we will win this election up and down the ballot. Thank you for your leadership. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Senator Tina Smith from the great state of Minnesota. She has been really quite busy while Mitch McConnell's majority has delayed and denied necessary action to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. Senator Tina Smith has been showing us what an effective Senate can do, leading by example and introducing legislation on childcare, K-12 infrastructure, on supporting all of the workers throughout the United States. Senator Smith has been there for working people, and we thank you. Please join me in welcoming Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's just amazing to be with all of you and to be following Stacey Abrams. And I think just a little bit ahead of my very, very good friend in the Senate, Sherrod Brown, feels like an amazing privilege. I'm so grateful to be with all of you. So I sit before you today as a Minnesota senator, and my core value on these issues is that I know and I believe that when people have the right to come together collectively and use their voices and their power to organize for better working conditions, for better health care, for better benefits, for a better retirement, everybody does better. My predecessor in this seat, a man that I love so well, Paul Wellstone, put it best when he says, "We all do better when we all do better." And that is at the core of what the labor movement is all about. And I think about what that means in this moment as we are being buffeted by a global pandemic, the economic, terrible economic fallout from that global pandemic. And then also this moment of reckoning around race and equity and income inequality that is so, I feel so painfully, because I'm the senator in the state where George Floyd was murdered. And so in this moment, we have to not turn away from the inequity that is confronting our country, that has been part of our country since its birth, but we have to face up to it. And this, to me, is the great challenge of our moment, both racial equity as well as income inequality. Think about what this means for just a moment. The average Fortune 500 CEO makes 287 times more than the average worker. 60% of the largest companies on the Fortune 500 list, profitable countries, paid no taxes at all. And what do we see? The impact of this COVID crisis on Black and Brown and Indigenous and people of color. We see they are the first to get sick. They are the first to lose their lives. They are the first to lose their jobs. And they are the ones that labor so hard in this moment when we need them. They're called essential workers, but too many times it feels like sacrificial workers. We cannot in this moment turn away from the need to face up to our opportunity to do something about this inequity. And we know what to do. The labor movement knows what to do. We need fair trade laws. We need to make sure that no matter where you live in this country, you have the right to collectively organize, whether you live in Alabama or Alaska or whether you live in my state of Minnesota. We need to make sure that we are investing so that healthcare is a fundamental human right. And we need to make sure that we are building a manufacturing and industrial strategy in this country that means that we are growing good jobs, American jobs in this country that also are contributing to a clean energy future. Now, I am so grateful to the labor movement because when I was before I even went to college, I was a member of a labor union, and that union helped me to send myself to college. And it is why I've been able to build the life that I have. So I want to thank you. I join in solidarity with all of you, and we have a very important election to win. And I look forward to winning it with all of you, and let's win big.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator. All right. Our next speaker hardly needs an introduction to the DNC Labor Council. He is one of the strongest advocates for working people in the U.S. Senate. He's a champion for public education, for American manufacturing, for civil rights, and so much more. There is no bigger champion in the Senate for labor than Senator Sherrod Brown from the great state of Ohio. He wears his canary pin for coal miners. It is my pleasure to introduce you to a steadfast ally of the labor movement, Senator Brown.
Carrie, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I love this part of Democratic National Conventions when I get to see the Labor Council. And I wish I could see you all. I know President Rick Maiden's coming on right after I am. It's an honor to go after Tina Smith. Tina is, she's a labor Democrat in the great Minnesota tradition. She's got a race this year. We count on her to win her race and hold the Senate. Soon after she came to the Senate, she got on our special pensions committee. You know what pensions mean in terms of collective bargaining into the labor movement. And she was there on the Butch-Lewis Act. McConnell has still blocked it. More on that later. But thanks to Liz and Randy and Becky and Jean and Lee and all of you. I want to just a couple of things. I did an interview with Joe Biden in front of a bunch of Ohioans a couple of months ago, and I said, "What's the first thing to do for workers in 2021?" Said, "Raise the minimum wage to $15 and pass the PRO Act, protecting our right to organize." Nothing's more important than that. And Joe Biden is talking about labor issues, frankly, more than any presidential candidate in decades, and that is so important. He runs his campaign through the eyes of workers, and he will make that contrast between the dignity of work and Trump's betrayal of workers. The dignity of work, the minimum wage, the PRO Act, wages, civil rights, all the things that Joe Biden believes in. The betrayal of Trump, the betrayal. Today he attacked Goodyear workers, steel workers, the old rubber workers at Goodyear. He attacked UAW members in Lordstown, promised them, "Don't sell your homes. We'll bring these jobs back." He didn't do a damn thing to help. He took away overtime pay for 5 million Americans, 100,000 people in my state. And what he's doing right now, there are 600,000 workers in Ohio who, as of a month ago, were getting $600 a week unemployment insurance. And so I say to Mitch McConnell, and I say to this president, do your jobs so we can do our jobs. Bring Tina Smith and me and all of the other 98 members of the Senate. Bring us back to Washington so we can extend unemployment benefits. What are these 600,000 Ohio workers going to do when their unemployment, now that their unemployment's cut off? What do they do for food? What do they do to pay their rent? And McConnell and Trump clearly don't care. Bring us back and do that. And also, and Carrie will care particularly about this, to put money in public education so that the schools can open safely, not just open, but open safely, and they're not doing that. So you know all these issues. You know who stands on your side. Let me close with a real quick story. 1 year into Kamala Harris's time in the U.S. Senate, this was January of 2018. I not known her well, then she'd only been in the Senate a year. We were talking the day after Martin Luther King holiday. We came back that week, and we were talking about our Dr. King speeches, what we said in our states. And every year at Dr. King's holiday, I make a speech about the dignity of work. And because Dr. King talked a lot about the dignity of work, as you know. So about a week later, Kamala comes up to me and she handed me a book that she had ordered called All Labor Has Dignity. It was a compilation of Dr. King's speeches for the last 10 years of his life. When he was assassinated, he was fighting for the dignity of work and fighting for some of the most oppressed workers in our country. Those were Memphis sanitation workers in the segregated South. And Dr. King understood better than anybody the intersection of labor, of worker rights and civil rights. And that's who we are as a part. If you love your country, you fight for the people who make it work. That's what Joe Biden is doing. That's what Kamala Harris is doing. That's what you all do, is we fight to win this election and to govern through the eyes of workers as Democrats and progressives do. So thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Senator. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Representative Connor Lamb. Connor Lamb knows what it takes to win an area that hadn't sent a Democrat to Congress for quite a while, winning a special election in the national spotlight and then turning around and running with a new map after almost immediately is no easy feat. I'm happy to introduce a champion for affordable health care and for organized labor. From Pennsylvania, please welcome Representative Connor Lamb.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for having me on. I wanted to just give one example of what I think Vice President Biden becoming president could mean on the ground here in Western Pennsylvania. And that's the example of a steel company whose members I met during my first campaign. And it's an amazing company. They have survived in a small town outside of Pittsburgh for generations when it seemed like every other company like them left and went overseas. And in fact, a couple of years ago, they attracted back about 100 new jobs from Nevada that were non-union jobs out there. And so everyone thinks jobs leave the Rust Belt to go to the Sun Belt and they leave union to go non-union. These guys figured out a way to do the exact opposite from that. And in their industry, the type of steel products that they make, their biggest competitor was General Electric. This is like a 400 employee operation competing against the likes of General Electric. And so I started talking to them about their business, and they were telling me that when they finish these gigantic products that you can only carry on trucks, they have to send a lot of them to the port of Philadelphia to be shipped overseas. And if you or I jumped in our car in Pittsburgh to drive to Philadelphia, it'd be about a 300-mile drive across the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Well, for their trucks loaded down with these giant pieces of steel, it was 900 miles, 3 times as long to get those pieces of steel to the port where they could go overseas. And so they were paying 3 times as much for transport. Now, a major, massive company like General Electric can shoulder costs like that because they don't hit them as hard as their smaller competitors. And this is a time, the COVID-19 pandemic is eating up small and medium-sized businesses and further entrenching the positions of large, publicly traded, well-financed corporations in every sector. So companies like the one I'm talking about, which supports more than 400 jobs bargained collectively under the United Steelworkers, are at a greater risk today because the president, who ran on doing deals, being a negotiator, bringing back jobs, making things, building infrastructure, has not lifted a finger to do a single thing for these people. Vice President Biden, on the other hand, never stops about talking about building back better. Something as simple as fixing enough roads and bridges in our state that these trucks can go a straight line on the way across. And by the way, emit 2/3 less from their tailpipes as a result of having a more efficient route. That's what infrastructure is about. So yes, we're going to create jobs building the roads and bridges themselves. And yes, all those jobs will be unionized. But the steel companies, the grocery stores under the UFCW, the hospitals that have to send things around, all of their operations will become more efficient and better able to compete on the world stage and against non-union parts of our own country when we do this infrastructure work. And so that's what we're focused on in this campaign. I'm a happy and proud member of the committee in Congress that is going to try to get this done next year with then President Biden's help. I'm really thrilled to be with you today. Thank you for everything that all of you have done for me in my short time in Congress. And I can't wait to work together with you next year to get some of this stuff across the finish line.
Thank you, Congressman. I'm pleased to welcome our next speaker, Valerie Biden Owens, to this meeting of the Democratic Party's Labor Council. Valerie Biden Owens is a political strategist who has managed all of her brother Joe's prior campaigns, including 7 successful United States Senate campaigns. And she has traveled around the world teaching women in emerging democracies how to organize and develop communication and political skills. She is known as Joe Biden's alter ego and confidant, and Joe Biden calls her his best friend. And after we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, Valerie Biden Owens will be known as the first sister and the first friend. Thank you for being here with us today, Valerie. We are delighted to hear from you. Many people tell us they know Joe, but I think you really know Joe. Thank you.
Let me thank you very much. It is my pleasure to be here with you on this third day of the convention. And I'll just start out by saying that it has not been easy raising an older brother. I'm going to go right to heaven. I have my hands full. I'm glad you've been there, and you're going to pull us over the line here in November. Let me begin by saying that we will beat Donald Trump in November. And the reason that we will beat him is because character is on the ballot. And it's not just Joe's character, it's your character, and it is America's character. At the top of the ticket, we have a man of integrity and honor and decency, and a man who is smart enough to choose a strong woman to be his running mate as vice president. My brother is the polar opposite of Donald Trump. They share nothing in common, zero. And that's what I'm really most proud of. Look, it's been a really difficult time for all of us, but it's also right now, it's a time of great opportunity and purpose. My brother has the courage and the vision to help us all build back better. I mean, that's what this is about. My brother, I believe, is the right person at the right time, for the right job, and for all the right reasons. So from the top of the ticket, we know that he and Senator Harris have to keep the blue states. They ought to regain the purple states. But the thing that we have to remember that we must do is we've got to cut into the red states. We got to cut the margins in the red states so that once they get to govern, they'll be able to keep the House and have a Senate that they'll be able to push the legislation through. So it's really important. But again, you guys, you've written the playbook, so I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. My brother's overcome a lot of challenges in his life. And because of them, he has developed a backbone of steel, but mostly, a heart of empathy. He's not unique, though. I mean, each one of us on this call has been through some tough times. And in these last 4 years, America has been, set back on her heels. But my brother appreciates and understands that every life is an incredible act of bravery. And that's why he's going to work with you to put America back on track again. We are resilient. We are determined. We are a good people. And as my mom would say, with the help of God and the goodwill of the neighbors, we're going to get this job done. And the job done is getting this guy out of the White House in November, come hell or high water. Joe knows that you cannot lead unless you can heal. And so right now is our opportunity to rally our better angels and bring us all together to unite and bring us again to the United States of America. There's an old adage that says, people don't care what you know until they know you care. Joe cares. You care. You were the generic, you were the men and women who brought us to the dance in the first place. So look, got my hand out, pull us over the line, the finish line in November. God bless you. Keep up the good work, and we will overcome. We're gonna kick. Well, I don't want to be vulgar. We're gonna win. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And yes, we are going to win if we do what we know we need to do. And
okay.
We will.
Let's go. Thank you.
Good. Valerie spoke about her brother, and now I want to introduce one of our brothers, and that's Kenrick Maiden. Kenrick Maiden joined the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades in 1977 after graduating college, when he enrolled in the floor-covering apprenticeship training program in San Jose, California. Since then, he has been a committed leader with a track record of creating job opportunities for his members and creating programs for people looking to enter the trade. After moving through positions in his local and region and the International Union, Ken was elected general president in 2013. Ken is joining us today to talk about Joe Biden's Build Back Better plan and what it will mean for workers in the construction industry. Please join me in welcoming our brother, Ken Rigg-Maden.
Thank you, Stuart. It's an honor for me to be with you here today. As I said, my name is Ken Rigg-Maden. I'm so very proud to serve as the General President of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, and to represent the union's 160,000 members. Our members' work in the finishing trades is essential to this country and has been now for over 133 years. Since our founding, our union has always believed that single-handed, we can accomplish nothing. But united, there is no power of wrong that we may not openly defy. We have used our collective power to ensure that workers are treated with dignity and respect, and together have been able to survive victories, to achieve victories for our entire industry that would have seemed impossible to a single worker dealing with unsafe job sites, poor wages, discrimination, or no benefits for their work. My life is a testament to the power of a union and why we vitally need to fund and expand apprenticeship programs. I started my working life as a trade unionist in an IUPAT apprenticeship program in California in 1977 and began working as a floor covering installer. My job provided me with dignified wages and benefits, and the union gave me a vehicle with which to combat racism, discrimination as a young Black worker. Unfortunately, vocational programs for good paying union jobs like the one that changed my life have suffered the effects of divestment for far too long. But we know Joe, and Joe Biden knows we must invest and build back better. Those vital pipelines in all communities, but especially those marginalized communities that have been impacted most by divestment in the public good. This central pipeline that provides good paying union jobs with strong benefits while helping the public good through building infrastructures is at the core of what our union does. And we'd like to provide the opportunity that was provided to me to as many people as possible. While our work in the finishing trades has always been essential to this country and deemed essential during this pandemic, our workers have felt expendable to this administration, which time and time again is guilty of ignoring the concerns of workers across industries. We're the workers who built this country and the economic engine that will speed us through recovery. We deserve a Biden-Harris administration that will put workers first. I know Joe, and our members know that in 2008, Joe is a partner to the economic stimulus plan that saw us through the Great Recession, kept our workers financially secure, and led us into an economy that facilitated robust building booms across the country, while the Trump administration spends day and night seeking to roll back all the gains organized labor has made in this country. We know that Joe Biden supports the PRO Act, which would strengthen workers' rights to conduct organizing campaigns, hold fair elections, and get to the bargaining table quickly. The PRO Act, the Davis-Bacon Act, project labor agreements, and the robust infrastructure funding included within the Moving America Act are vital to a true recovery for the working class of this country. Our union has fought and won great progress with our members, our industry, and our country. We must stand in solidarity and defeat this current administration, which seeks to divide us up by the color of skin, where we were born, and who we love. I have seen the great promise of our country in my life, and I know the remarkable things that we can achieve when we stand together. So let's organize together with all of our collective strength to win together with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden this November and to create the country we all deserve. Thank you all. Go Joe.
Go Joe, and thank you, Ken. We're now going to hear from Congressman Donald Norcross, who has represented the 1st Congressional District in New Jersey since 2014. And we like this, he is also a proud IBEW member, as you could tell from his shirt. And he remains the only electrician in Congress today, having worked for years installing and restoring power for New Jersey homes and businesses. And I like this a lot too, Congressman, you are the former president of the Southern New Jersey Building Trades Council, and you served for 16 years as the president of the Southern New Jersey AFL-CIO Central Labor Council. Please join me in welcoming our brother, Congressman Donald Norcross.
Thank you, Stuart, and it's great to see you again. We last saw each other on the train coming back from Washington. What a remarkable time we're in. Earlier, we had Liz Schuler, who comes out of the IBEW, and it's great to see that we're all collectively having this conversation today. You mentioned that I'm the only electrician. Well, it's about diversity of backgrounds and what we bring to the table. I saw Connor Lamb on a few moments ago, and Tim Ryan, I guess, is coming up shortly. Those are two individuals who understand what we go through each day, and they have those conversations about working men and women. Back when I ran the AFL, we had a program we started called Public Officials with a Union Label. Rank and file members from across the diversity of our unions would run for public office, from city council to mayor, all the way up to Senate president. It comes out of the ironworkers. And then I had the opportunity to go and serve in Congress. The reason I bring that up is inclusion as part of the Democratic Party with labor has been hand in glove. It's always been that way. But it takes an effective organization to run somebody out of the rank and files. So what do? Right across from my district is Delaware. We called Joe up. And Joe was there, came over, helped us in a fundraiser, and helped get many union members elected. That's the type of personality. That's the type of person that Joe is. He's got your back. And this is long before him running for president. He's always been there for us. That's why the workers are the center of his campaign. He understands when workers make it America, America makes it so much better. Senator Brown was on a few moments ago. He and I served on a multi-employer and pension committee, talking about restoring, make sure that that comes back. Having somebody spent 37 years, as I had, in a multi-employer plan, understood it at a different level. And that's what's important. Joe will be there for us. In fact, he worked so well with us, we used to call him our third senator. I have two great senators, but he was always there for us, that helped make it work. So as part of my responsibilities, I serve on Armed Services Committee. This year, we put forward for the first time, Make It in America. Right now, you only have to make it 50% to be called Made in America. Working with the machinists, we moved that up incrementally. It's now going to be 100% within 6 years, as long as the Senate wakes up and get it done under Mitchell. But even if it doesn't get done now, we know Joe's going to get it done, because part of his platform is making it in America. And to all my brothers and sisters on this call, we need more help. We need more union members running for office. So when they reach Congress, we don't have to explain it to them. They'll understand it. God bless you. We appreciate everything you do every day. Go, Joe.
Thank you very, very much. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Carmel Martin, who's here to talk to us about the labor platform. The Biden-Harris campaign and the Democratic National Committee have put together an incredibly strong labor platform for 2020. As Stuart has pointed out many times, this is a platform that we are proud to present to our members and to our voters. The platform is something that we can organize around. The platform is something that we can run around, and a platform to build our country back better. Carmel Martin is a public policy leader. She has worked at the highest levels of government, of progressive think tanks, and campaigns. Smart, thoughtful, and tough. There is nobody else that we want on our side advocating on our issues throughout the policy conversations that she is part of, through the platform committee, through Unity Task Force, and continuing on within the Biden campaign. We are so fortunate to have her here to talk to us directly about how a Biden-Harris campaign and administration will fight for working people every day. Carmel, welcome and take it away.
Thanks so much, Carrie. It's an honor to be here. Thanks to you and to Stuart for your leadership and for inviting me. It's an honor to talk about the Biden-Harris agenda for labor and to give a very brief overview of the party platform. This bold, ambitious Democratic Party platform aligns with the strong commitment from Vice President Biden and Senator Harris to protect workers and rebuild the strength of the labor movement. I want to especially acknowledge the leadership, hard work, and engagement from the labor leaders who gave many, many hours of their time to our process. Throughout our Unity Task Force process, we were lucky to have Lee Saunders and Sarah Nelson serve on our Economy Task Force. Randy Weingarten and Lily Garcia were leaders on our Education Task Force and also participated in the Platform Committee. Mary Kay Henry was such an important voice on our Healthcare Task Force and again on that Platform Committee. We're also grateful for the leadership of Rich Trumka and Stuart Applebaum on the Drafting Committee, and thrilled to have participation from Lonnie Stevenson, Walter Dix, and Robert Martinez on the Platform Committee. As Vice President Biden has said, he believes that rebuilding the middle class starts with one word: union. First and foremost, the Biden-Harris administration will strengthen our labor laws, which my colleague Erica will talk a little bit more about. But workers are also at the heart of the Biden-Harris economic agenda: Build Back Better. The Biden-Harris plan is to make it in America and create millions of good jobs. That means enforcing Buy American rules. It means investing $2 trillion to build modern, resilient infrastructure. It means building a stronger, caring economy. And it means advancing racial equity as a central part of our economic recovery. The 2020 platform lifts up these priorities thanks to the many labor leaders who help us get through the process. The right to organize and bargain collectively is the heart of the economic policy section. The economy section also contains detailed provisions about job quality and infrastructure and care work, consistent with our Build Back Better plans. Even more importantly, the commitment to creating high wage and union jobs is reflected throughout the platform, just like it's reflected throughout the Vice President and Senator Harris's plans. It's not just contained in the economy section, but in COVID-19 response, healthcare, education, climate change, and foreign policy. It also addresses other strong pro-worker issues like protecting Medicare and Social Security, protecting the U.S. Postal Service, prioritizing the enforcement of labor and employment laws. The Vice President's campaign positions and the 2020 Democratic Party platform represent an exciting, inclusive, ambitious vision for working families and for our nation. But as many speakers have said, it won't become a reality unless we turn out millions of Americans to elect Vice President Biden, Senator Harris, and Democrats up and down the ticket this November. On behalf of the Biden campaign, I look forward to working with each and every one of you to do just that and put these plans into action. Thanks so much for everything you do.
Thank you so much, Carmel, and it's a pleasure to work with you. Next up, I have Representative Tim Ryan from the great state of Ohio, and he loves us so much, he came back again on a second day. He is a great advocate and ally for working families and for organized labor. With that, I give you Representative Tim Ryan.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks. Great to be with everybody. So many good friends, Congressman Norcross and Connor and Carmel, and you guys are just doing a phenomenal job. I just want to, obviously in a couple minutes, try to communicate what I think is really important here in a place like Ohio, and really what's being highlighted now by the Biden campaign with regard to organized labor. If you just look over the past few months, you will see in one of the months we've had like 40 or 50 million people. This was right when the coronavirus started to hit, who filed for unemployment. In that same month, we had the largest expansion of the stock market since the Great Depression. A few weeks later, we saw JP Morgan Chase file $34 billion in revenue. At the same time, we had tens of millions of people still unemployed, still not working. And just yesterday, we see the stock markets setting another record while millions of people are still out of work. And the government the Republicans in government fail to address their basic needs. And I have the utmost confidence in Vice President Biden and Kamala Harris and their teams to be able to get their arms around this global pandemic that we're all dealing with. And as we do that, I think there's a lot of opportunities for us really to rebuild the United States of America, to do the Build Back Better plan, to really create and dominate the industries of the future. To me, that's what this is all about. How do we work with organized labor? We've got a candidate that's not afraid to say the word labor or union. And that's really important because as we move forward here, I think there's been a recognition over the last couple of years or a couple of months, of people who are out swimming in the economy right now, whether they're in the food service industry, whether they're grocery store clerks or cashiers or essential employees. I think there's an awareness now of really how important the unions are. We're seeing it with the teachers as we talk about going back to school and an agenda that is going to cut the workers in on the deal. There's an opportunity for us. Dominate electric vehicles, dominate batteries, dominate the charging stations, the national network for vehicles, charging infrastructure. Those are good paying union jobs. And we're going to have a president who is going to make sure that the workers get cut in on the deal. So I'm super thrilled to campaign about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Build Back Better plan. But we've got to remember, if people are going to vote for Democrats, we've got to make sure when we get in, we rebuild this middle class, we win the industries of the future, we dominate the new economy, and at every stage of the game, we cut the workers in on the deal. We make sure we focus, and we will focus on, because Joe has focused on this his entire career, making sure people got pensions, making sure communities are clean, making sure they're safe, making sure that our teachers are getting paid, making sure the infrastructure is up to date, making sure we have addressing the energy issue like he is so we can dominate the future. So I can't thank all you enough. I love you. My career has been built on helping organized labor because organized labor helped me get here very early on. So God bless. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you on another Zoom call or maybe even out on the trail. Thanks.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey is one of our country's outstanding Democratic governors. And since taking office, he has demonstrated his commitment to helping working families, signing into law bills that will get New Jersey to a $15 minimum wage, end gender wage discrimination, and provide equal pay to women, ensure all workers have access to paid sick days, and expand the state's paid family leave program. And these have been especially critical to workers during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, he has shown exceptional leadership in keeping case numbers down and controlling the spread of the virus. Please welcome Governor Phil Murphy.
Hey everybody, Governor Phil Murphy here. Thank you so much to my dear friend for that introduction, Stuart, and for the invitation to be a part of today's Labor Council meeting. I'm so grateful for your incredible leadership throughout this crisis, as well as the essential work that the members of RWDSU have been doing on the front lines of this pandemic. Organized labor has been a tremendous partner to the American people. Unions have literally built, educated, fed, clothed, and tended to the health of our nation. And let it never be forgotten that the union door is the door through which millions of American families walk through and into the middle class. But particularly in these difficult times, you all have been more than partners in our continued national progress. In fact, it is your members who have been on the front lines, keeping this country running and strong throughout the pandemic. And we are grateful beyond words for all that you have done. In New Jersey, my state, We recognize the important role labor plays in ensuring fair wages, improving working conditions, and raising the standard of living for the middle class. And we share those same values, I promise you. In the past 3 years, I've signed legislation extending and guaranteeing paid family and sick leave, putting our minimum wage on a clear path to $15 an hour, and protecting the rights of workers to organize, among so many other laws that would not have been possible without the support and help of organized labor. And as proud as I have been to sign those laws, I will be even more proud when we have national leadership that holds labor in that same regard. And if we all get out to vote in the upcoming election, we will. But we not only need a president who stands with labor, we need to flip the Senate, hold the House, and win governorships and state houses all across the country. There is no denying that we are living through unprecedented times. And I don't just mean COVID-19. The past nearly 4 years have seen an endless tide of attacks against organized labor. And these unprecedented times require ethical, rational leaders who are capable of sound decision-making. As union members, your voices are critically important. I've been saying it for a long time. This nation was built by union hands, and working together, we will see that the union hands rebuild it for a stronger and fairer future, just as we are now doing in New Jersey. And all of you are so central to that effort. It may feel as if life has been at a standstill for the past nearly 5 months, but even through this crisis, we have to keep our eyes on the future. And I know that organized labor will sustain and propel us forward through this election, and we will come out of this stronger and fairer than when we went into it. Thank you all. Thank you, Stuart, my dear friend. God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you, Governor. We're getting close to the end of the program, but we have a few more speakers, and we're going to hear from another governor now. Gretchen Whitmer was elected governor of Michigan in 2018 and was immediately seen as a rising star of the party. Earlier this year, Governor Whitmer was selected to give the Democratic response to Trump's State of the Union address. And on the first night of the convention this week, she addressed the nation again, this time on behalf of Joe Biden. And now we are delighted that Governor Whitmer is addressing the Democratic Party's Labor Council. Please welcome Governor Whitmer of Michigan.
I'm Gretchen Whitmer, the 49th governor of the great state of Michigan, that woman from Michigan. Michiganders are no different from Americans everywhere. We love our families. We want a good life today and a better life tomorrow for our kids. We work hard, and we expect our government to work hard for us as well, in expanding health care and fixing our roads and preparing our kids for a brighter future. When I was running for governor, people told me to fix the damn roads because blown tires and broken windshields are downright dangerous. And car repairs take money from rent, child care, groceries. And I ran on expanding access to quality, affordable health care. For me, for so many Americans, health care is personal. It's not political. This is especially true now as we battle a global pandemic. To that end, I want to especially thank our brothers and sisters in labor for all you have done throughout this crisis. I've been able to speak to a number of our dedicated union members over the phone, and I know the hard work you're putting in on our behalf. Our frontline workers showed the real soul of the nation with their sacrifice in putting their communities ahead of themselves. Working people help build this country, and I'm proud to be in your corner, protecting your families and helping us all heal. This is the most important election of our lives. If there's anything we've learned over the last 4 years, it's that we need leaders who understand facts and science, fight for American workers, will work to expand quality, affordable health care, and build a more equitable, just, sustainable nation. The crisis has shown how important it is that we have Democratic leaders at every level for our public health, for our ability to put food on the table, and to make government work for everyone, and protect our right to vote. It's shown us that the health of our people goes hand in hand with the strength of our economy, and we need leaders who will focus on both. We must do all we can to make voting easy and convenient. We have a Democratic ticket this year that shares all of those values. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we have candidates with tremendous integrity, experience, and empathy to help us heal and get us back on track. Now we need to build an infrastructure to get Joe and Kamala over the finish line and elect Democrats up and down this ballot. Every governor will tell you how important state and local races are. We need leaders in our state legislatures who help us get things done for the people. There are Democrats running across the country who share our priorities on infrastructure and healthcare and education and more. And they need all of us to do our part to help them get over the finish line. This is a crucial time. Make phone calls, donate, talk to your friends, family, and neighbors about how crucial it is we take this election.
All right, next we're going to hear from Tucker McDonald from the DNC, the Director of Labor Outreach. Before joining the DNC, Tucker worked for 2 unions, AFG and the National Association of Letter Carriers, and is married to a teacher. Tucker is terrific, and we're really lucky to have him on the inside at the DNC. Tucker, please let us know what the DNC has in store.
Thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you so much, Stuart, for the wonderful work that you both have been doing this week to make sure that we have had 2 wonderful Labor Council meetings. We just wanted to take some time from the DNC and to thank everybody for all of the work that we have seen over the last 4 years. All of us remember how we felt on Election Day in 2016 and knew that we had to fight all the way back up until we got to this place to put ourselves in a position to make sure that we could stand up for working men and women. We're so excited about the enthusiasm and all of the activism that we've seen, both in the midterm elections and through the primary process and getting to this point. No one at the DNC, I can promise you, looks at polls anymore. The only poll that matters to us is what happens on Election Day. Every single day, we're working as hard as we can to ensure that Democrats are getting elected up and down the ballot. And for my brothers and sisters in the labor movement, we all know what union members in the labor movement has gone through for the last 10 years. We have an opportunity in this election to not only elect a president that will stand up for working men and women, but will be a strong supporter of unions and say the word unions and stand up for the labor movement. And if we're successful, which I think we all believe we will be, we still have to keep working. We still have to keep fighting. And the job of the DNC will be on November 4th to go ahead and start working towards the midterms. Think about what we went through in 2008, how happy we were, the control of the Senate, the control of the House, and the control of the presidency, and think about what happened 2 years later. Think about the impact of that election on the future of the labor movement, on unions in places like Wisconsin, on court decisions like the Janus case. It had an impact on right to work, collective bargaining rights all throughout this country. So we have to do everything we can that once this election is over and we're successful, to continue to make sure that we organize. Never has the DNC had such a strong partnership with the presidential election and the presidential campaign. From the moment Joe Biden became our nominee, the DNC has been working hand in hand. We've had a great chairman who has stood up for the rights of working men and women from the day he took the oath as our chair. And we know that we can all be successful if we work together, the Democratic Party and the labor movement, to ensure that working men and women are a part of this administration. So before I end, I'm going to call on my counterpart at the Biden campaign, Erica Dinkle-Smith, who is the Director of Labor Engagement, to talk directly to you about what the Biden campaign needs from union members and their locals to ensure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the next president and vice president of the United States. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Tucker. I'm so happy to be here today, and thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Let me just first say I am a proud union member, and I've been working with unions for almost 14 years now. It's been an honor to come work for Vice President Biden's campaign since June of last year. I came to work for the vice president because he has fought for unions his whole life. And in the Senate, he was always proud to have a reputation of labor votes for Biden, but even prouder that Biden votes for labor. This is the same philosophy we've taken for our labor strategy on the campaign, a broad tent that incorporates everyone and puts workers, union members first. Our engagement philosophy has been just that. If it impacts union members, we want to get the most and best input possible to create policies and plans to build a coalition that is reflective of union members and working families across the country. The fact is, and we know this on the campaign, we know this in the Biden-Harris camp, that there has been a war on labor's house, our house. And for decades, they've been weakening safety regulations, restricting overtime pay, rewarding offshoring, caving to corporations, because the Donald Trumps of the world know that if they diminish workers' power, they can run the table on all their employees, union and non-union. And many of those non-union are just brothers and sisters who just don't know it yet. You're welcome into this organization, you're welcome into this campaign, and you're welcome into fighting for everyone's rights with us. I was a labor rep in Wisconsin after Act 10, and I can tell you, I saw things that would make many of your hair curl. It's past time that the balance of power shift back to workers in this country. Government should not just defend workers' rights to organize, but encourage collective bargaining. Joe has said it many times. Under Trump, the NLRB has pushed the scales of power to corporations against workers. And under the Biden administration and the Biden-Harris administration, the NLRB will finally be the referees and the fair people that we need and encourage union organizing as it originally was intended to. He's fought for unions his whole life. As president, he will include pro-worker provisions in every single economic recovery legislation and relief package, including PRO Act, the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, to crack down on employers who try to block unions, Card Check. Joe was originally co-sponsor of the Employee Free Choice Act to make it easier for workers to unionize through Card Check, union bargaining rights for public service workers, measures to stop companies from misclassifying workers to depress wages, otherwise known as wage theft, provisions to hold executives personally accountable for labor law violations. But he'll also go further. He will ban right to work laws so states can't stop unions for collecting dues from everyone who benefits from their work. Ban the permanent replacement of striking workers. Only award federal contracts to companies that commit not to run anti-union campaigns. And so much more that puts workers first. We will have the most pro-labor president you have ever seen, but only if we work for it and fight for it. With fewer than 76 days left, we have to make every single day count, and we need your help. If my time as a labor representative has taught me anything, is that I know we cannot win without labor at the table, and we will win when labor fights. We plan to engage unions much the same way as we've done with many of our other engagements and with our field programs by creating coordinated and broad coalitions of our friends and allies amongst labor to work collaboratively and cooperatively. We have created campaign-branded media called Union Members for Biden-Harris. And let me repeat that. That's you, union, with a U. A campaign that is not only not afraid to say the word union, but proud of it. We have union-specific text lists you can join if you text POWER to 30330. We're also using advanced technology and media opportunities to engage as many voters as possible. We will be coordinating on virtual phone banks, texting, and we'll be coordinating on organizer trainings and all organizing opportunities in states and nationwide. And if you have a smartphone, you can download the Vote Joe app to get engaged. If no one from the campaign has asked you to get involved, please consider this the ask. Today, I'm asking you to fight with us. Text POWER to 30330, get involved, and help us fight for the most pro-union White House in our lifetimes. Thank you so much, Tucker.
Thank you both. And I want to join with Carrie in talking about the the amazing work that Tucker is doing and also the amazing work that Erica is doing. It's so important, and we're grateful to both of you. Carrie and I would like to thank everybody in this meeting today for participating in the 2 meetings this week of the DNC's Labor Council and staying to the end of the meeting. Please continue to stay engaged. Please continue to do all you can to ensure that those people you know will turn out to vote in November for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Nothing in our lifetimes has ever been more crucial. And if you vote by mail, remember to mail your ballot early to ensure that it arrives on time. And finally, please join us tonight for coverage of the Democratic National Convention. I know that both of us are so proud to be part of the American labor movement with you. Now on to electing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and taking back this country. Thank you all.